So in this one, we're gonna pretty much wrap up our lessons on how to play all our power chords in different keys. Um, you may be having some problems going in reverse. Maybe you're doing really great going up, but you're having problems going reverse. It's kind of throwing you off. It may not. Maybe you got it right off and you have no problems with it. But I'm going to show you something to kind of help you out with that, because you'll want to practice that a lot going reverse if you are having problems with it. And then we're going to also go into figuring out if you can play the open E string chords and the A string chords, and plus be able to fill in any other chords that you're aside from these patterns that we're playing. So let me bring the camera down and let's jump into it. Okay, so here's the thing. If we go over and we say, all right, I'm going to play my power chords with these patterns in the key of B major. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Over half step is our diagonal. Over half step, we got 1, 2, 3. Well, that's great and wonderful, but what about all over here? You have chords over here too. Well, we need to be able to work on figuring that out. So all we're going to do, this is where our pattern starts. And if you remember in the other lesson, we talked about where the beginning of our major scale pattern, that's the pattern that we're actually really using. We just turn it into an actual pattern. The beginning and the ending of our previous one, they meet together right here, forming our root block. Not fruit block, root block. So what this means is when we go down a half step, all we gotta do is do our 3 diagonal, 3 in reverse. So 1, 2, 3. Do our diagonal is right here. Go down a half step, and then we would go over here. Here's an imaginary fret. But really, we wouldn't be playing that. We'd be going to here, so it'd really be. And that's going to be the part once we get down over here that might be a little bit confusing. But we'll talk about that in a second. So, again, once you figured out how you can go up and then back down to the starting point, it may throw you off going this way. So we need to do a lot of practice going through this in reverse. And the best way to do this is picking some chords higher up on the neck so we can keep going, backwards. We don't really want to be picking like right around here and here because there's only a couple chords going this way. So let's go up and let's take F sharp, for instance. So here's the beginning. We could go up in 1, 2, 3, diagonal, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. But we're going to focus on going backwards. So F sharp. We got to go down a half step because remember, there's our root block. Here's the beginning of our pattern that goes up. But then we got to go down a half step. And now we're going to play the ending. And then we're going to play that pattern going back down. Because remember, the ending and the beginning meet right here. And that's where it forms our root block. So whenever we're doing this, we got to make sure, what key are we in? We got to find that. Then move down a half step to start this all off. And that's 1, 2, 3, down a half step. Then we do our diagonal, go down a half step, and 1, 2, and 3. So now here's where it can get a little confusing. We're not all the way to the end of the fretboard yet. Well, guess what? It just keeps going on and on. If you had endless neck, it would be, if we're going reverse, it'd be 3, our diagonal, 3, go over half step. He goes to the next pattern, 3, diagonal, 3, over half step, 3, diagonal, 3. We just go on forever. So we did our 3, diagonal, 3, which is basically, we're back at the starting point here. but we're down an octave. And remember, we went down a half step to go ahead and start the whole thing over. Well, we're right here. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to go down a half step, starts the whole thing over. And then that would be 1. And then we would need to go down a whole step down to get to our 2, our second set going down. But we can only go down a half step to our opens. So we cannot go any further down. This is where it ends. The key of F, you can only go here. You can't play an open E or an A. And again, we're going to talk about that in a second. But let's try some more going down, because you just got to keep doing this, getting used to it. Let's try, that was F sharp. Let's try A. Okay, there's our root. Remember, you got to start by going down a half step. That's 1, 2, 3. Go down a half step, diagonal in reverse. Down half step, 1, 2, 3. So now, again, we got to go down a half step to start our next pattern of 3, diagonal 3. So just go, you can't go on your A string. I like to go back to my E string. I'm going to go down a half step because that's the beginning of our pattern. Now we go down a half step to start the ending of our pattern, do it in reverse. 1, 2, and then again, if we use imaginary fret, be 3, but we don't have to do that. We got 1, 2, and then 3. And that's all I want you to do. Just keep randomly picking different ones. You know, let's see. We'll do E. So this one's going to be a little bit more trickier because we're not going to be able to even finish it off really. But here's E. You go down a half step. Here's 1, 2, 3. Over half step. Diagonal reverse. 1, 2. And actually, yeah, we can do 3. And there we go. There's our third. Brings her right back up to the beginning. So that's what I want you to do. Just keep working back a real lot. Just get used to doing that, because that's going to be the harder part of all this. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is once you get down here, you may not know whether, don't automatically think, oh, I can play my E and A. I'm over here at the end. No, make sure you don't do that, because it's not always true. And I'll show you the trick on how to figure that out. So let's go, what we were doing, it was, I think it was F sharp where we were ended, where we weren't sure whether we could play power chords or not. So we got F sharp, go down that half step to start the ending of our first pattern. 1, 2, 3, down a half step, do our diagonal reverse. 1, 2, 3, and now we gotta go to the end, because again, this is a beginning of our 3, diagonal 3. We gotta go down a half step to get to our next one. Starting the ending of our next pattern of 3, diagonal 3 in reverse. So here's our root. Gotta go down a half step. Now, if you're good at remembering that you can go ahead and you need to go down a whole step, and to be able to hit the next chords you need, but you realize, oh, I can only go down a half step, so I can't, this is as far as I can go. If you can realize that right off the bat, good. If not, here's what you do. Remember over here where all of our open strings are the same as our notes at the 12th fret? We got E, E, A, D, D, G, G, B, B, E, E. Well, what we do is we start at our key, F, even though we start F sharp, even though we start at an F here, we're just going to start here on our F right here and go 1, 2, 3, diagonal, over half step, 1, 2, 3. Did you see any chords land on the 12th fret of the E and A strings? No. So that means you cannot play an E5 or an A5 in this key. So that's how it works. If chords do not land on the E and A strings, then you cannot play the chords in the open chords in that particular key. If they do, then you can. So let's take G. We'll do that in reverse and just go all the way down. So okay, G. Down a half step, start our pattern. 1, 2, 3. Go down a half step, do diagonal reverse. Half step, 1, 2, 3. Now we got to start the pattern again. So we're going down a half step, 1. And then we can use our magic fret, but we know by now, hopefully you can realize there's two right there. That right there just tells you, but if we were to check that out, 1, 2, 3, diagonal, 1, 2. That lands right on there, and both E and A strings we play power chords, and 3 of course, and then the half step. I land on both of those. That means I can play my E and A. Let's see. I think I think B flat was one that was kind of weird. So let's do B flat in reverse. Let's see if that works out. So here's B flat. Go down half step. 1, 2, 3. Down a half step. Diagonal reverse. 1, 2, 3. Now again, we gotta start our pattern again. We're actually hitting the ending and go reverse. Let's see how this works. 1, 2, 3. And then here, you might be like, oh my God. So we had 3. Let's see, can I play my E in A5? I gotta go down a half step, but this is where that diagonals is located. I'm not sure whether I can play my E or A. Again, you may be able to realize right off the bat what you can play, and you will after a while be able to figure this out pretty quickly. But in the beginning, chances are you're not going to really be sure. And again, you do not ever want to just automatically assume you're going to play the E and A. Let's now take the B flat and go up and analyze it. We got, okay, here's 1, 2, 3. Here's my diagonal. Over half step, 1, 2, 3, and then the half step to there. So if you notice, again, 1, 2, 3. Here's my diagonal. The E string. I go over A string. And then it starts again over here. So if you notice, on the E string, that does not land on the 12th fret, but the one in the A string does. So if we're doing that in reverse, B flat, down a half step, 1, 2, 3. You can't play the E5, but because we figured out over here we can play the A5, we can play that A5. So again, 2, 3. Oops, sorry. B flat. 1, 2, 3. Down a half step. And then that starts the. Oh, what am I doing? Sorry, I messed that up. I'm not thinking here. Here's our major, B flat. Make sure you don't do that. See, I just did what I do not want you guys to do. Don't go 1, 2, 3. Remember, this is the beginning of the pattern, and then that meets with the ending of the pattern. So you always got to make sure you go down a half step to start that next pattern, because that's where that pattern ends, and this is where the pattern begins and goes up. So make sure you always remember. Here's my key. I got to go down a half step. Remember, because both of these are part of our root block. So we got 1, 2, 3, and now I can play my A5, because we figured out we can play our A5 over here. So hopefully that made sense. You're going to have to work on this a lot, thinking about it, going, again, you're going to want to do a whole bunch in reverse, and because that's what's going to throw you off. And then what's going to really throw you off is when you get to the end trying to figure out whether you can play the open E5 or A5 and just use that 12th fret trick to help you out with that. As you go along, try to use your head to figure out, okay, here, I'm over here, B flat, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I gotta do my diagonal, so I would have to go down a half step to hit my other the first point of the diagonal, which, if we use major fret would be over here, but we got our A. But I would then have to go down actually another half step to hit that other chord on the E of the diagonal, and I cannot go any further. So okay, so once I do that, or actually here, all I can hit is A. So you try to get to the point where you can really think about it and figure out pretty quickly without using the trick. But in the beginning, certainly use that trick. So yeah, just do a whole bunch of those. Of course, go ahead and do some up, but then come back down and then continue down and see if you can now do all the power chords in that particular key, whichever key you pick. And again, just pick random ones. And yes, and then finally, you just focus on that mainly. You need to get that clear in your head. Then, when you start to get more familiar with it, and you're ready, apply it musically. Start working on jams, incorporate. Mainly, you want to really mess around with those half step points. So where the diagonal is, do a lot of jamming, including that. You go over to the other where the ending of 3 diagonal 3, and then you have the root block where the ending of that, and then the beginning of the next one, 3 diagonal. So you have 3 diagonal 3, 3 diagonal 3, where those two meet and form that root block. You can do a little bit of jamming in there because you got to make sure you're used to that. Again, all the rest of them where you have the 3 next to each other, yeah, you can bounce around in there. Those are really easy. But it's those half step points where you got to really memorize those. And again, start in smaller sections and then widen it out. But make sure you get all of this straight in your head. While you're doing that, you can go ahead and just take your 3 diagonal 3 and continue to just jam in those and focusing on that diagonal area. But make sure you get this whole, what we talked about in this lesson, get that solid, get the mechanics down, all the thinking and everything, get that down first, and then you want to start applying it musically. And little by little, this is going to become easier and easier, and you're going to be able to then sit down, look at the fretboard, someone says play in the key of A flat, and then boom, you're going to see all the patterns on there, and you'll be able to jam in those. And basically, really, you end up having a few keys that you're really mainly focus on a lot. It's usually key of C major, A relative minor, because they're relative to each other, and then G major, and the E relative minor is related to that. So it's basically generally those 2 keys, and then but definitely you want to get used to jamming in different keys and be able to see those patterns all over the neck. That's it for this. This was a little bit longer one, but there was some important stuff in here that had to go over. So if you're confused by any of it, then just rewind to that point and just keep watching it over. Take your time. There'll be PDFs, so you can look at those. You can see it. Sometimes it's really good to see it on a nice graph. And again, if after that you're still confused, then just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. All right, so that's it. Work on that, and really the only next thing is applying full bar chords to all of this, and that all depends on where you're at with your strength of your fingers and stuff. We may go into working on that, but yeah, work on this, and then we'll take the next step. All right, we'll see you in the next one.